The midday sun broke through the foliage, casting its light on the faces of the women. Mrs. Tackers, irritated, tried to disperse the glare with a rolled-up newspaper. Unintentionally, she hit Olivia, who had decided to take a short nap in the sun. The newspaper struck Olivia right in the face, and she exclaimed, "Mrs. Tackers, you should be more careful, or I might retaliate. I assure you, you won't like it." The women immediately perked up, stirring on the grass where they were relaxing after lunch. The youngest farm worker, Nancy, began discussing the situation. "I observe and wonder, why wave a newspaper? It's not like we're swatting flies. To keep the sun away, all you need is a regular handkerchief to cover your face. I always do that. It works wonders." Mrs. Tackers silently examined the rolled-up newspaper, choosing her words for a response. Unexpectedly, Olivia put Nancy in her place. "Listen here, child of progress. We'll definitely consider your suggestion at the next meeting. But that's only possible if you present it in writing." Nancy widened her eyes, trying to digest the information. "Olivia, why write it down when everyone already knows?" "Because, dear, it's the procedure. Everything must be registered. You submit a statement, they mark it in a special journal, and then they discuss it at the general meeting of the Farm Residents' Council." The girl asked in confusion. "Like a corporate meeting?" Olivia couldn't answer because laughter overcame her. The drowsiness completely left the other women, and they eagerly awaited the resolution of the dialogue between the representatives of two generations. If Nancy had looked around, she would have realized that the women were ready to burst into laughter. But the naive girl tried to understand Olivia's words to the end. After a moment of contemplation, she looked at her mentor, who was contorting with laughter. "Olivia, I haven't heard anything about the Farm Residents' Council meeting. Maybe it recently started. Is it some kind of workers' congress?" The women couldn't bait any longer, and hearty laughter ensued. Olivia couldn't stop and, within a minute, was holding her stomach. "Oh, girls, I can't take it anymore. I'll burst from laughter. Workers' Congress. Oh, that's it. Help. Girls." Nancy still couldn't grasp the reason for such laughter. She fluttered her eyelashes and sincerely asked, "Did I say something wrong? Why are you laughing at me?" This remark sparked another wave of laughter. It's unknown how long this teasing of the girl would have continued if not for Mrs. Tackers. She looked at the women with disapproval. "Ladies, enough. Instead of laughing at the child, you could help her get used to unfamiliar things." Olivia had just recovered but found another reason to mock. "Mrs. Tackers, where's the child here? Modern youth knows so much that it can teach you a thing or two. Well, except for Leslie and me, we're innocent like children, for sure." Everyone simultaneously looked towards the sleeping Leslie. This woman had impressive body proportions, and comparing her to a child involuntarily caused laughter. Mrs. Tackers swung the newspaper. "Olivia, stop it. What will people think of us? They'll say there's something strange going on at Iris's farm again." Olivia looked around. "What people, Mrs. Tackers? It's just cows all around. By the way, Nancy, this is the secret society I told you about. The farm residents, they ear the cows." Nancy blushed, and the women laughed again. Even the stern Mrs. Tackers couldn't hold back a smile. "Don't take offense at them. They're not laughing out of malice. It's just a custom we have." Olivia intervened again, but she was serious this time. "Really, dear, don't take offense. Every place has its traditions. For example, in the Navy, they send newcomers to paint the waterline, even though it doesn't exist in reality. And here on the farm, we have our own rules for checking new recruits. The Farm Residents' Council is just the beginning. There are even more rigorous methods. So always be on your guard." Mrs. Tackers said, "Why are you scaring the girl? If Iris finds out, you'll go paint that line yourself." Nancy had regained her composure. "I'm not scared. My mom told me a lot about working on the farm. I used to. I mean, in the past 2 summers, I worked only in a different place. I just got a little confused and didn't immediately understand that Olivia was just joking. I thought maybe there really is such an international organization. From the distant corner of the clearing, Leslie's drowsy voice was heard. Well, Olivia, did you get what you wanted? Depends on how you look at it. Leslie. By the way, I was doing your job while you were taking a break. You're the shift leader, and it's part of your direct responsibilities working with the new recruits. If you're hinting at a bonus, don't count on it. All right, ladies, that's enough. Today you've exceeded the laughter quota. So, let's all get up and get to work. Otherwise, someone might complain to Iris. The shift leader headed towards the lawn where the summer camp was set up. Without turning her head, she gave orders. Nancy, come with me. I'll show you how to work the milking machine properly. I already know, Leslie. Olivia showed me, Nancy replied. Well, you can demonstrate what Olivia taught you to me now. The new equipment had been installed recently, and not all milkmaids were familiar with this progressive milk collection system. The older workers were reluctant to embrace this innovation. We used to milk cows by hand, and all this machinery just ruins the product, they complained. Leslie responded immediately. Anyone who doesn't like it can leave. People worked hard, created smart machines to free you from manual labor, and you're complaining. You need to keep up with the times. What will you do when you get a carousel? Of course, the women had heard about this technical marvel, but they were very afraid of change. Leslie, too, approached the modernization of the enterprise cautiously, but her position required not dwelling too much on the topic within the team. The director trusted her, and she valued that because jobs were hard to come by, and Millico provided a good earning opportunity. Therefore, all the women, even the restless ones like Olivia, idolized Iris Adams, who once saved the dying farm. Nancy's voice interrupted the tranquil flow of thoughts. Leslie, I've done everything as you said. Can I go to the calves now? Leslie smiled. If you've finished milking, go ahead. Do you love the calves? The girl smiled. Yeah, they're all so sweet. Last year, I took care of the calves. I thought they'd assign me to work in the maternity ward this year, but my godmother said I should try working everywhere. I'm planning to enroll in veterinary school this year. The shift leader shook her head. I thought you were here for the money. Let me tell you, you've chosen an unfortunate profession. Nowadays, young people are more inclined to become lawyers or economists. Dealing with cows and calves, I came here out of desperation when they cut my position at the library. Nancy asked sympathetically, do you regret it? Of course, I have some regrets because I studied for a completely different specialty. I never thought I would have to work with cows. In my youth, such work was considered almost shameful. Leslie replied. The girl widened her eyes in surprise. But that's not right. For example, when I finish my studies, I'll work a bit to gain experience. You know, Leslie, I haven't even told my parents. You're the first. I dream of breeding my own breed of cows, combining all the best qualities in them. The shift leader looked at the girl with interest. Yes, you've set yourself a serious task. It never crossed my mind. The day on the farm went without any adventures, which is good. Leslie truly valued the favorable atmosphere and the confident team and the good relationship with the management. This woman, worn out by a difficult life, was glad that a bit of luck had come her way in her old age. But this tranquility wouldn't have happened without Iris. The village of Deptford was situated on both banks of an unnamed river. By the early 80s, the village had almost entirely collapsed because the main farm had stopped operating, and people lost their jobs. The villagers hurried past the buildings, avoiding eye contact. Watching death is always painful, even if the dying object is inanimate. Iris Adams perceived the demise of the farm as her personal tragedy because her parents had worked there their entire lives. Her mother toiled on the farm, and her father worked in the fields. Mr. Adams instilled in his youngest daughter from childhood the most honorable job is working the land. Remember, daughter, that no great scientist or even a doctor saving lives every day can live without bread. So, it's safe to say that the land gives life to people. Although her father liked to speak loftily, his words reflected reality. Most villages were sustained by the farm. Therefore, Iris's choice was predetermined in advance. After school, she studied animal husbandry and then pursued a career as a veterinarian. The farm committee chairman was genuinely surprised by the girl's decision when she came for an internship. Mr. Cooper tried to dissuade her. Iris, you amaze me. Today, all the youth has gone to the city. Life is better there, and there's more money. My daughters have settled quite well there, living in apartments with conveniences. Why would you get a profession that no one needs today? Or did your father convince you? You should listen to him less. The girl felt uncomfortable hearing such remarks and tried to argue with the chairman. Mr. Cooper, I'm old enough to make independent decisions, and it seems strange that you should discourage my choice. It's very odd. Nothing strange here. Everything is falling apart. Our farm is in huge debt with no prospects. Think for yourself. Where will you find work after your institute? If not today, then everything will be auctioned off tomorrow. Iris asked, Mr. Cooper, will you take me as an intern or not? The man paced around the office several times and then said, No. If I take you in, it means I'll be obligated to provide you with a job. I'm afraid I might find myself on the streets tomorrow. Mr. Cooper was right. This man held on for another 2 months and then disappeared from the village, taking the money he had brought from the bank the day before. The people left without pay were ready to tear apart the chairman's wife, whom he left in charge. But he didn't account for one thing: hungry people capable of unexpected actions. Outraged by the disappearance of the chairman, people headed to the accounting office. They demanded 3 months' worth of salary. An elderly worker locked herself in the office and thoughtfully hung a sign on the door. No salaries today. People didn't bother her and went to Mr. Cooper's residence. People surrounded the house made of white brick and didn't let anyone out. The frightened wife of the chairman darted from one window to another. It's unclear why she stayed, but she had no way to exit the house, surrounded from all sides. However, the blockade didn't last long. A policeman arrived at the scene on a motorcycle and loudly said, People, don't cause unrest without reason. Disperse and go home. How is it without reason? The chairman promised that salaries would be issued today, and he left himself. We have every right to know where our money is. The policeman had to calm the people down alone. People, you know how tough the situation is in the country. It's right that you think only about yourselves, and the state doesn't matter to you. You need to be patient, and soon everything will change for the better. The policeman's speech was unconvincing, and people only became more hardened. Enough. Enough of promises. Olivia's father initiated it. He wasn't afraid to say everything he thought. Dear policeman, you were talking about our debt to the state. But what debts can there be if the state doesn't care about anyone? Someone from the crowd asked. Officer, I wonder how much this scoundrel paid you to cover for him. We won't leave until we get our hard-earned money. We'll even dismantle the brick house, as it was built with our money. The policeman was perplexed. This man, who had served the law for many years, had never faced the aggression of local residents before. Of course, he couldn't admit to the enraged people that Mr. Cooper had warned him about his departure and asked to protect his wife. The woman decided to stay because she was afraid the house would be dismantled in their absence. Time passed, and passions cooled down. By night, only the most zealous truth-seekers remained near the chairman's house. Mr. Adams was also there, but despite the vigilance of the people, the chairman's wife managed to escape. Her disappearance was discovered in the morning when the noise of a departing car was heard from the adjacent street, which was closely connected to the farm manager's plot. Young guys rushed there, But it was already too late. She's gone. Probably. The policeman helped her. Mr. Adams, like everyone else, was disappointed. We won't get our money. But this scoundrel will still pay for it. After Mr. Cooper's escape, the situation on the farm became catastrophic. The young agronomist, who temporarily took on the responsibilities of the deputy chairman, didn't know what to do in this difficult situation. Crops were withering in the fields, and the animals in the barns were crying out of hunger. Emergency measures had to be taken. This burden fell on a small group of workers led by Mr. Adams. The men together gathered the remaining fuel. Many contributed from their own reserves. The women set out to save the livestock. At that time, the still young Mrs. Tacker turned to Iris. "You, Iris, are studying at the institute. You know more. You should take charge." The girl didn't argue and took on an overwhelming burden. She had to forget about her personal life for a while and postpone the meeting with her fiancé. Darren also worked on this farm, and like others, he suffered from the actions of the runaway chairman. However, he had no intention of standing up for the truth along with his work colleagues. The guy tried to dissuade his fiancée from it. "Iris, don't you understand that times have changed? Your father and all like him look ridiculous against the backdrop of ongoing changes. Now is the most convenient time to go to the city and try to find your place there." Such words from her beloved hurt the girl to the core. "Darren, how can you think like that? Only rats abandon a sinking ship. But we are human. Are you really indifferent to the fate of our farm? And do you not care about what will happen to your fellow villagers?" "Iris, these are just words. I've noticed for a long time that you have an overly hypertrophied sense of responsibility. Understand that you're not the sun, and despite all your efforts, you can't warm everyone. But at least I'm trying to do something useful. And you suggest I give up? No, I'm suggesting something completely different. Think about our future." "Darren, I don't see my future anywhere else. I thought you also wanted to live and work here." "I used to want that, but now I've changed my mind. Times have changed. You, Iris, think about my offer." It was sad for Iris to admit to herself that all these years she had idealized Darren. They started dating in the 10th grade. Darren lived in the neighboring village of Connerton and, after school, went to the local college, where he mastered the profession of a tractor driver. The young man considered profit the main thing at work. He worked day and night for a good income. Guys praised him for his hard work. His photos often appeared in the local newspaper. The increased attention to Darren made him take it for granted. Once he even expressed himself very ambitiously in front of Iris' friends. "The girl I choose to share my life with should consider herself the luckiest. After all, it's hard to find a guy like me." Iris felt awkward for her boyfriend, and she tried to shift the focus to her friends. "Girls, have you seen the poster at the club? Is this famous band really coming to us?" "Nonsense. But you, Iris, don't need to go to concerts. After all, you have your own star right here," said Liz, Iris's best friend. Darren didn't like the criticism, and he flared up in anger. "Why argue with such primitive creatures like you? Villagers." He turned around and got on his motorcycle. To leave an indelible impression, Darren started abruptly, and a cloud of gasoline enveloped the group of girls. Liz, with regret, said, "Iris, are you dating such a loser? He's not worthy of you." "Liz, Darren is a good guy. He just likes to brag sometimes, acting all tough." "You're defending him in vain. Guys without principles like him will sell even their own mothers. I won't be surprised if he sets you up for something someday." This conversation took place before Mr. Cooper's disappearance. Iris didn't pay much attention to her friend's words. Deep down, she even thought that Liz envied her because her boyfriend didn't possess height or striking looks. But very soon, the girl realized that her fiancé had a dark soul. When the farm was left without a leader, a whole chain of significant events followed. Although the candidacy of the young agronomist was approved from above, He quickly resigned. Then the team decided to collectively harvest the fields. This small victory inspired the people. The second achievement was that they didn't send the cattle to slaughter, but one day, outsiders intervened in the peaceful village life. In late August, unfamiliar people arrived in Deptford. The delegation came in 3 fancy cars, considered luxurious at that time. All the men were in expensive suits, and an expression of superiority froze on their faces. The procession stopped near the administration, and the newcomers lazily stepped out of the cars. Looking around, Mrs. Takers came out onto the porch and inquired from the guests, "Why have you come to us?" A man in a shiny suit smiled warmly, but his eyes had a frosty demeanor. With a condescending look, he glanced over the gathered crowd and confidently declared, "I am your new boss, and I'm pleased that you're welcoming me." The women nudged Iris forward, and she understood that she had to speak on behalf of the entire team. She didn't rush with her response and scrutinized the guests for a long moment before addressing the man, "Mr." The man immediately corrected the girl, "Mr. Billen, Mr. Billen. Why on earth are you making such loud statements?" He continued to smile. "It's simple, dear. I plan to buy these unclaimed lands." Iris also smiled, but her words sounded like a challenge. "Firstly, this land belongs to us. We have all the documents. And secondly, it's the first time I've heard from you that serfdom has been reinstated." Unexpectedly, a guy in a tracksuit jumped forward. "Are you the smartest one here? They told you clearly that your village is bought, or almost bought. It doesn't make a difference." Billen glared at the guy, and he stepped back from Iris. The arriving gentleman delivered a persuasive speech. "People, time is moving forward, and we must not lag behind this movement. Now is the time for new ideas. I plan to build a modern settlement here with beautiful houses and good roads. There will be shops and restaurants, a large paid parking lot, and a hotel." Billen spoke very convincingly, but the faces of the people darkened with anger as they heard his words. Mrs. Tacker asked, "And where will you put us?" "We all live here." He smiled again. "I promise to provide everyone with jobs and good wages. But this is only possible if we come to an agreement." Iris interrupted him. "We won't agree." "Why?" "Because we have completely different plans. You don't need to try. We won't sign any agreements with you." The guy in the tracksuit jumped back to the girl. "Do you know who you're talking to? You'll regret your words. Regret them a lot." With a sly smirk, Billen looked at the girl and then quietly said, "Time changes everything. I'm not saying goodbye to you. We'll meet again." The car doors slammed shut loudly, and the guests left. After their visit, an unpleasant aftertaste remained, but Mr. Adams decided to cheer everyone up. "Let this gentleman roll wherever he wants. We'll give him a run for his money. Right, guys?" But the enthusiasm of the elder was supported by few. The majority of people, with lowered eyes, hurried to their homes. Mr. Adams suddenly said, "Yes, it's good that the cowards showed their true colors in time." In the evening, Iris told Darren about the visit of the city guests. The young man got scared. "You've started nonsense. They'll come again tomorrow. Iris, we need to get out of here while we're still safe." The girl asked in surprise, "What does it have to do with you? Nothing threatens you here." "Iris, you are not indifferent to me. We were planning to get married in the fall, remember? Or have you forgotten? Autumn is still far away." Only a few days had passed since Mr. Billen and his entourage arrived in Deptford when an emergency occurred. In the middle of the night, the wooden barn housing the calves caught fire. The entire village rushed to save the animals. Iris and her father were among the first to arrive at the fire site in an old car. The flames completely engulfed the structure, and Iris rushed to rescue her pets from the fiery inferno. The cries of people mixed with the panicked roars of cows running in all directions. They decided to save the calves first, but the adults, frightened by the fiery chaos, broke down the wooden gates and also rushed into the street. Iris didn't have time to move aside when this roaring stream surged straight toward her. Another minute, and she would have been trampled by the cows, but someone pushed her away. Although this helped save the girl's life, one of the passing animals still grazed her with its horns. The blow struck her face, and a stream of blood instantly covered Iris's light dress. Hastily, she pressed a handkerchief to her cheek, ignoring the pain, and continued her rescue efforts. The firefighters arrived at the scene when the barn was completely burned down. The adjacent cowshed also suffered significant damage. However, the most tragic part was that the emergency didn't go without victims. Several calves and the cow Maliko perished, Iris's favorite. Along with other women, the girl cried over the burned bodies of the unfortunate animals. Lord, what kind of inhumanity does it take to set the nursery on fire? No one doubted that it was arson, but the police didn't rush to initiate a criminal case. First, a local policeman arrived at the scene. He walked around the burned structures for a long time and then said, "Simple negligence. What can you expect when there's no owner at the enterprise? I'm sure this version will be confirmed by experts." Mrs. Tackers began to argue. "How did you figure it out so quickly? But may I ask, respected policeman, where do such conclusions come from?" The policeman didn't pay attention. He walked around the ruins for another hour and then left on his motorcycle. City police officers arrived only 2 days later. They also carefully examined the remains of the structures and the bodies of the deceased animals, but concluded that the cause of the fire was a short circuit. No humans, except Iris, were harmed in the fire. The girl consulted a doctor only the next day when her face swelled from inflammation. The wound looked terrible, and the surgeon scolded her. "How can you be so irresponsible about your health? If you had come to us immediately, we would have treated the wound and stitched it neatly. And now, what does your pretty face look like? Probably. Now you can't do without the help of a plastic surgeon." The local doctor's diagnosis didn't worry Iris. She couldn't think about anything other than the animals affected by the fire in those days. However, her fiancé didn't behave manly. Darren couldn't recover for a long time after seeing his bride with a bandage on her face. He even started to stutter. "Iris, how did this happen?" She told him the details of the night incident, but there was no despair in her voice. "Nothing serious. I'm healing quickly." Darren looked at the bandage with fear. "The wound is very large." "Yes, about 10 centimeters deep." "Can you show me?" The girl lifted the bandages cautiously, and Darren couldn't contain his scream. "Iris, this is terrible." He turned pale, and fear froze in his eyes. For a couple of minutes, he remained in shock, then quickly said goodbye to Iris and left. A roommate who observed this scene asked, "What was that?" Iris said, "Darren is afraid of the sight of blood, but he will come. We are planning to get married in the fall." The woman gave Iris a skeptical look, but didn't say anything. Darren no longer came to inquire about his fiancée. For several days, Iris listened to the sounds outside, hoping to hear the familiar motorcycle horn any moment. However, the fiancé disappeared, and even his close ones didn't know where he went. Iris didn't like to recall the events of those distant days. She had permanently erased from her life the person who was scared of her face. But no one, not even Liz, knew that Darren's betrayal became fatal for the girl. Iris didn't have a chance to tell her fiancé that they would have a child. When it became clear that Darren wouldn't return, she decided to terminate the pregnancy. The doctor who performed the operation, with undisguised regret, said, "You did it in vain. Anything can happen in life, but thoughtless actions can lead to sad consequences. I don't want to scare you, but terminating the first pregnancy often deprives a woman of the opportunity to become a mother. I know, doctor. Believe me, I thought long before making this decision." The personal tragedy affected Iris's subsequent life. Once cheerful and somewhat naive, she turned into a constantly dissatisfied person. Not only the farm workers, but even Mr. Adams tried not to upset his daughter. Only once did he express his dissatisfaction on this matter. Iris, you've turned into an unbearable fury. It's not right. You work with people, after all. Dad, I'm doing it all for our sake. And if I have a tough character, it's all because of this life. Mr. Billen and his entourage never appeared in their village again. Soon after the fire, the policeman also left the area. Things on the farm were gradually improving, but the uncertainty remained about who would manage the enterprise. In this suspended state, the collective found itself for almost 2 years. Iris had just managed to get her diploma when the head of the administration didn't waste time on formalities and immediately got down to business. Iris, the situation with your enterprise is not quite good. The form of existence is unclear, so we need to find a solution that will satisfy both you and us. The young woman didn't know what to say because she wasn't well versed in legal matters. The head of the administration understood the reason for her confusion and recommended the only right way out. We are putting ownerless enterprises up for auction. The cost of most objects is conditional. In addition, for such purposes, you can always get a loan at a minimal interest rate, which can also be considered a significant advantage. In short, if you express a desire, I guarantee you strong support from our side. 6 months later, Iris Adams became the owner and director of the Millionaire enterprise. Everyone welcomed these changes with joy and actively tried to help the young leader. Work became that reliable support for Iris, helping her to get through life. Another attachment for the woman became her friend's daughter, Nancy. When Liz asked her to be the godmother for her daughter, she gladly agreed. Thank you for your trust. I never even thought that I could become a godmother. It's so great. In the beginning, Iris visited her goddaughter every day. She bought expensive toys for the little girl and took her to the city to enjoy various activities. Liz often scolded her friend, Iris, you're spoiling my daughter. That's why I'm the godmother. To give the child what the parents don't want to give her. Liz, forgive me, but I have no one closer than you, Greg, and Nancy. Parents don't count. They hold a special place for me. Although Liz didn't quite like this car for her daughter, she didn't want to ruin her relationship with her friend. She understood that Iris was pouring her untapped motherly love onto her goddaughter. At first, she tried to somehow change her friend's life. Iris, you've condemned yourself to loneliness in vain. Interesting men are showing interest in you, but you avoid their company. Liz, I have you, and I don't need anyone else. But that's not right. You're still young and a very attractive woman. You could create your own family, have a daughter or son. Iris tried to turn the serious conversation into a joke because she couldn't even confess to her friend that she could never become a mother. With my job, everyone would run away from me. Who needs such a mother and housewife? But Liz didn't give up and continued to press on the most delicate emotional strings. So Iris had to switch to a firmer tone. Liz, thank you for everything, but let's not bring up this topic anymore. My train has long left, and I can't catch up with it, no matter how much I wish. After that conversation, Liz stopped trying to arrange a personal life for her friend. As Nancy grew up, Iris visited the girl less frequently. However, the goddaughter almost daily came to the farm to play with the calves. Watching the girl, the friends whispered to each other, "It seems our next generation is growing up. Consider them almost ready-made talents." Iris, of course, I encourage your daughter's inclination to work, but I don't want such a fate for her. Any mother wishes the best for her child. Although I disagree with you that working on the farm is not prestigious, you can't deny that things have changed dramatically in the last 10 to 15 years. Many wealthy people are moving to the countryside and completely changing their lifestyles. The benefit of such changes is not only in ecology, but also in organic food. Now everyone is literally hunting for farm products. Well, you can't argue with that fact. And our Millionaire fully confirms that it is an enterprise guided by quality standards. In short, Iris, you're doing great. Don't praise me too much, or I'll become conceited. But that won't happen to you. You love your work too much. And you are a simple person. Pride is not a threat to you. Iris looked mysteriously at her friend. I didn't want to tell you, but since we're on the subject, I confess that grand changes await us soon. Liz's eyes sparkled, and she started questioning her friend. Iris, what have you come up with? Tell me. You know that ambiguity is tormenting for me. Iris laughed. Liz, how do you talk to the management? Usually I talk. Besides, I'm your best friend, which means I'm allowed to do things that are forbidden for others. Come on, tell me, what new idea has struck you? I'll wait. I'll reveal the secret to you first. I'm planning a serious modernization. Remember when I went to the capital for a seminar? Yes, I remember. Well, there, people shared experiences, and I like some innovations. Next week, they'll deliver special boxes for calf rearing to us. Then we'll move on to more serious things. I plan to install modern equipment on the farm. The entire milking process will be automated, and only one person will control it. Liz breathed out. Fantastic. But after a minute, the woman came to her senses. Iris, wait. It means machines will replace us, and we, along with the girls, will be left without work. Don't worry. No one will be left without work, but everyone will have to retrain. Less than a week passed when a large truck braked near the old farm. Men in neat uniforms got out of the car and began unloading plastic structures resembling small houses. Nancy had just come to visit her pets. The girl bombarded one of the men with questions. Mister, what is this? This, dear, is houses for the calves. Now each will have its own place. Nancy watched with an open mouth as the men installed the box in the section for the smallest ones. But the most amazing thing was that the calves immediately started to explore the houses. It was amusing to observe this process, and the girl distracted the woman from her work. Mummy, look, the calves went into the houses by themselves. That means they like them. And one calf licked everything first, and then lay down to sleep there. Liz was also surprised by the animal's quick wits. I've been working for so many years, and this is the first time I've seen something like this. And they say that cows lack intelligence. They are much smarter than us. The enterprise Milico gradually expanded. Soon, a small milk processing workshop opened, producing yogurts and exceptionally tasty sour cream. However, the most unexpected consequence of the changes was that young people from the city started coming to work in Deptford. So there was an urgent need to build homes for the new employees. One day, Nancy came to the director's office. Iris was surprised. You could have called. I'm very busy right now. From the girl's expression, it was evident that her matter was very urgent. Iris, please don't be mad. It will only take a minute. The thing is, the documents are accepted at the Institute only until the end of July, and today is already the 28th. Nancy, you've completely confused me. What institute? And what do I need to do? Nothing special. I just wanted to consult with you since you are my godmother. I'm listening carefully. Iris set aside the documents. The girl sat opposite and said, I also want to enroll in the veterinary academy. I've already inquired. There's a very promising biotechnology department there. Well, there must be tough competition there. That's true. But I have good scores. Godmother, I'll study and help you. I'm afraid it will be cramped for you here if you want to become a biotechnologist. But in any case, I support you. Nancy joyfully jumped around the office, and the director of the enterprise sadly looked at her goddaughter, thinking, how quickly life has passed. Nancy is all grown up now, so naive. She might get lost in the big city. When the excitement of the future student calmed down a bit, Iris said thoughtfully, Nancy, I need to tell you a very important thing. Yes, godmother, I'm listening. My dear girl, don't trust everyone. People are different, and some may hurt you, so you can't keep your heart wide open. Don't worry, godmother. My mom has already had a preventive talk with me. You know, I'm not as foolish as it seems. Sometimes it's very useful to play dumb. The girl kissed her godmother and ran off to her tasks. I responded over the last words of her goddaughter for a long time. She always considered Nancy a simpleton. But today the girl exposed herself, and her candid admission simultaneously pleased and frightened Iris. Mr. Stewart hovered over the barbecue. Grilling was one of his favorite pastimes. The successful businessman loved preparing exclusive meat dishes. With a confident motion, he flipped the meat pieces and poured wine over them, instantly filling the air with a unique aroma. However, his wife's dissatisfied voice spoiled the entire experience. "Darren, was it really necessary? You know my stance on wine." Trying to remain calm, the man replied, "Anne, it's good wine. Meat is cooked with wine to make it tender and juicier. All these are just myths. My acquaintance, a doctor, says that most modern hypotheses about the benefits of certain products are mostly successful marketing moves. And you know that yourself." The young woman stretched out on the lounger, hoping to attract her husband's attention. Darren cursed inwardly because he couldn't stand his wife's nitpicking. Unbeknownst to her, the woman added fuel to the fire. "Darling, why didn't you invite our neighbors to the barbecue? They are such sweethearts. I have a completely different opinion about these people. Besides, I don't like large gatherings, and you know that very well. I want to relax and unwind on the weekend with my family." Anne responded, "Darling, who is family?" Darren felt a volcano boiling inside him. "How many times have I asked you not to use those silly words? I am not darling. Fine. If it irritates you so much, I'll just call you a husband. Will that suit you?" "It will. I also want to remind you that my family is not just you and your dog, who, by the way, annoys me a lot. Don't forget, I have a son, and I invited him for this pleasant weekend." Darren saved this special move for the final stage to put his young wife in her place. He was a good strategist, and Anne immediately jumped up. "Why couldn't you tell me before? You ruined the whole mood. How many times have I asked you to have your meetings with your son somewhere else?" Darren loved it when Anne was furious. In those moments, she resembled a heavily painted monkey. To her provocative statement, he responded completely calmly, "Dear, this is my home, and I will do what I like here and invite whoever I think is necessary." The young woman almost cried out of helplessness, and he affectionately smiled. "Anne, I hope you understand everything now. Not stupid. I get it." "Well, that's splendid. You know it's better not to provoke me. Be content with what I give you, and don't try to tame me. Playing games with me won't work." Anne walked energetically toward the house, and her dog followed behind, barking plaintively. Darren couldn't seem to remember the name of this living toy. Still, the scene unfolding before his eyes was calming and injected some positivity into the dull everyday life. As if sensing his gaze, Anne gracefully turned around. Watching her provided aesthetic pleasure. Darren reveled in this beauty, and suddenly an unexpected thought pierced him, realizing that all his women resembled each other in some way. Am I seeking the same archetype? There's something common among all my women. He had never thought about it before and was now struck. After his shameful escape, Darren prohibited himself from thinking about the past. For over 20 years, he had successfully managed to avoid dwelling on it. However, in the last few months, everything he tried to forget persistently reminded him of itself. The memories that tormented him invaded his days, disrupting the usual rhythm of life. And most often, the echoes of the past caught him off guard. Like now, when all of his attention shifted to his wife, he whispered softly, "How did I not notice before that Anne resembles Iris? She has the same gait and gaze." Darren closed his eyes for a second, and the memory of the fire where his fiancée was injured flashed before him. Back then, as a very young man, he was unaware of his thoughts and actions. Panic seized them when they saw the huge wound on Iris's cheek, and a treacherous thought of escape crossed his mind. They will all laugh at me if I marry a girl with such a flaw. He vividly imagined the ugly scar that would later adorn his fiancée's face. Throughout the journey to his native village, he pondered various ways to get out of the predicament. The idea of a secret escape initially irritated him, but gradually, he reconciled with it. Thus, deciding his fate in just half an hour, Darren hastily prepared to leave. Since there was no one at home, he didn't have to answer unpleasant questions. He packed the essentials into a bag and was about to leave his father's house when he remembered about the money. Darren's parents, like himself, were left with nothing after the chairman disappeared with the company's cash. However, the young man knew that his father had an emergency fund. He rummaged through all the drawers and shelves in the cabinets, but found a stash with only a small amount. He was disappointed when he counted the money. This will only be enough for the journey. Darren also took his mother's gold earrings and his father's engraved watch. There were no other valuables in the house, and he, rushing out the door, even forgot to close it. Only approaching the station on his motorcycle did he remember that he hadn't left a note. Still, it was unsafe to go back, as his parents could have already discovered the missing valuables. A reassuring thought calmed him. I'll send them a letter as soon as I arrive. At one of the stations, Darren managed to send a brief letter to his parents. I'm sorry, but I had to leave. Like many young people from the village, Darren intended to seek his fortune in the capital. His luck took an extraordinary turn right at the station. He walked leisurely through the crowd with his travel bag. It was challenging to resist the flow of people, and at some point, he was carried forward against his will. Darren saw a woman standing at the very edge of the platform, but there was nothing he could do. In an instant, he would have knocked the stranger over, but he managed to absorb the entire impact himself. As a result, the woman was saved, and he tried to get out of the dirty puddle. The lady had no idea that the man lying at her feet had essentially saved her life. She looked at Darren and, with undisguised disgust, said, "So young, yet so drunk." Darren struggled to stand up, rubbing his bruised knee. Instead of gratitude, such cruel words. By the way, it should have been you lying in this puddle instead of me. And, for your information, I don't drink at all. He picked up his bag, from which dirty water was dripping, and continued on his way. He heard the clacking of heels behind him. Young man, wait. He stopped. The woman smiled apologetically. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. I'm not easily offended. Darren wanted to continue his way to the nearest bus stop, but the woman apparently thought that her apologies alone were insufficient. Since it happened this way, let me give you a ride. My car should be arriving shortly. Just tell me where you need to go. The opportunity to save on transportation inspired the guy, but he didn't know where to go. There was nothing left but to confess honestly. I haven't decided where I want to go yet, so I can't give you an exact address. The woman looked more closely at him and, with a touch of poignant sadness, asked, Do you need a job? Well, yes, I'll help you. Let's say it's a service for a service, and we'll sort out the housing issue right away. Darren hadn't figured anything out when the stranger dragged him to her car. Get in, and don't think about anything. They drove for an hour and a half until they were out of the city. Darren hadn't fully grasped the situation yet, and muttered aloud, I ran away from the village and came back to the village. The woman pretended not to notice his ironic remark. She asked the driver, Harry, I'm taking a break today after the trip, and tomorrow at 7:30. Come pick me up here. And please, don't be late. Sure, Gloria. I'll be right on time. Darren froze, awaiting further developments. His companion looked at him with the same maternal gaze. Don't be afraid. Nothing threatens you here. The woman pressed a button, and the tall gates began to move. Usually, I drive myself, but I feel unwell after trips. Come in, make yourself at home. My husband and I always lived in this house from spring to autumn, but after his death, I only visit here on weekends. I have an apartment in Washington. It's more convenient there because work is nearby, and everything I need is at hand. Gloria had a soft voice, and listening to her was very pleasant. Darren obediently followed his hostess, wondering what kind of job she would offer him. They worked about 200 meters along a beautifully paved path. The one-story house appeared unexpectedly behind the wall of greenery. Here is our home. My husband inherited this house from his grandfather, who was a writer. And in this wing, you will live if you find the position I'm ready to offer you today suitable. The woman pointed to the summer house with the veranda. The building looked quite nice, and Darren approvingly said, "Solid house. Oak, isn't it?" Gloria looked at the guy with surprise. "Sorry, I didn't understand." Darren chuckled self-satisfyingly. "My father in our village used to build houses and taught me a bit about this craft." "So, are you a builder?" "No, not at all. You need a long time to learn that. I worked as a tractor driver on the farm, but our farm went bankrupt. The chairman ran away, taking the money with him. Cases like that are widespread today. A contractor cheated my husband too. His heart couldn't take it. He died of a heart attack a little over a year ago." The woman looked away, and Darren understood that she was about to burst into tears. There was something attractive about Gloria, and he really wanted to comfort her. However, he awkwardly failed to do so. "Don't be upset. Everyone is born, and then they die." The woman smiled through her tears. "That's true. But the worst part is that loved ones leave at the young age. My husband didn't even live a month to his 50th birthday. And now I'm all alone." "How alone?" "What about children?" "We didn't have children. At first, there was no time, and then there were health problems. I've shared with you more than I should have. Let's talk about business. For now, I can offer you the position of a caretaker. Nobody lives in the house right now. In the summer, I rented it to friends, but they've already left." "I agree. Just tell me what I need to do." "Nothing special. Just keep an eye on the house. If you feel like it, you can tidy up. There will be a separate payment for that." Darren could see that the homeowner wanted to say something else but hesitated. He smiled with his charming smile. "Gloria, don't worry. Everything will be fine. I have no sins to hide. Here's my passport." She breathed a sigh of relief, but still carefully examined the document. "Thank you, Darren. You have a beautiful name." "Thanks. But I don't like it. I want to change it." "It's not difficult to do today. I'm even ready to help you if you don't change your mind." The homeowner gave the new employee an advance, and Darren was surprised at her generosity. Village life had taught him to be frugal. In the store, he bought only groceries for a week, saving the rest of the money. From early morning until dark, the guy brought the estate's territory into a beautiful state. When Gloria arrived on Saturday, she didn't recognize her own property. "Darren, you're a real wizard. I'll pay you right now." The woman took out her wallet and started counting the bills, but the young man stopped her. "Not now. Better later. You can pay all at once." He accidentally touched the woman's hand, and the sensation of her velvety skin was stronger than an electric shock. Gloria probably felt something similar because she blushed immediately and pulled her hand away. Darren had never dealt with adult women before. The hostess was about 15 years older than him, if not more. But with each passing day, he felt more drawn to this mysterious woman. He tried to suppress these feelings, but nature was stronger than him. Gloria understood perfectly well what was happening with her young employee and took the initiative to bridge the gap. It was already deep autumn. On that Saturday, the homeowner arrived late and asked Darren to light the fireplace in the house. "It's too late to go back to the city. I'll stay here overnight. It's just a shame I didn't stop by the store. If you're worried about dinner, I have groceries. I can cook dinner myself." "Great. I'd love to try your dish. And for such an occasion, I'll get a bottle of good wine." My husband collected elite drinks. They sat by the fireplace for a long time, enjoying aromatic wine. The tongues of flame flickered and leaped upward in a dance that felt magical. It seemed to embody a feeling that was now impossible to restrain. After that magical night, Darren immediately proposed to Gloria. She looked at him with a familiar, affectionate gaze, but remained silent. He knelt before her. "I understand that I'm not worthy of you. Can a simple village guy hope for the favor of a woman like you?" Gloria gently stroked his forehead. "Darren, your background has nothing to do with it. There's another reason." "What is it?" "The most banal one. Age difference. Do you know how old I am?" "Don't, Gloria. I don't want to know. For me, you are the best, the most desired woman in the world." And he wasn't deceiving her in his feelings, because he couldn't imagine life without Gloria. They got married before Christmas. Now he became Darren Stewart, the legitimate husband of a business lady with a huge fortune. Gloria included her young husband in the board of directors of the company she headed. Darren heard office workers discussing this loud event behind his back. Lucky guy. Just like in a fairy tale, it will pass. Their touching romance will either end, or Gloria will get tired of her new toy and discard him, or this handsome guy will find himself a mistress in our company. And our girls wouldn't mind having fun with such a hunk. Darren didn't like hearing such comments, but he tried not to react to them. The company dealt with construction, more precisely, supplying various building materials to the market. Darren quickly grasped the business, and his wife entrusted him with finding partners and negotiating deals with contractors. The young man felt happy and believed it would always be that way. However, it's known that trouble doesn't announce its arrival. Misfortune struck Darren at the most inconvenient moment. He and his wife were at a social gathering when she suddenly fell ill. The man was deeply frightened as Gloria began to struggle for breath, and her lips turned blue. "Darling, what's happening to you? Should I call an ambulance?" With a trembling hand, he handed his wife a glass of water. She took a few sips and tried to reassure her husband. "It will pass. I've had this happen several times before. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I have a heart condition since childhood. I couldn't become a mother because of it. Well, the doctors didn't allow me." "Gloria, surely something can be done. Nowadays, medical procedures are incredible." "Darren, you're so kind. I'm grateful for this happiness. It's a shame we had so little time together." Gloria was taken to the hospital, but by morning, she had passed away. The doctor explained to the young widower, "Unfortunately, your wife had a complex heart defect. She underwent 2 heart surgeries, but it only helped partially. The only option left was a heart transplant. However, she adamantly refused to accept another person's heart." Darren remained silent, bowing his head. The doctor asked with surprise, "You didn't know about your wife's problem?" "No, Gloria never told me." The death of his wife became a terrible loss for Darren. For over a month, he didn't step outside and didn't want to see anyone. The man couldn't fathom how he would continue living without his beloved. But time, the best healer, gradually began to mend the wounds of his heart. As per Gloria's will, the company and all her property passed on to him. He immersed himself in the business. Soon after, he met Lilia and once again felt the taste of life. However, the second marriage didn't bring him happiness and lasted only 3 years. "Dad, are you asleep? This is how you greet guests." Darren startled. He hadn't noticed when Casey arrived, and it slightly upset him. However, he immediately tried to shift the blame onto his son's shoulders. "Casey, you have a bad habit of sneaking up. You scared your father. It's not far from a heart attack." The young man flopped into a lounge chair and began to swing rhythmically. "Fine. Next time, I'll borrow that thing the police use to announce their presence. That thing is called a megaphone. I don't care. I don't plan to remember it. So, next time, I'll use that megaphone and announce my arrival from the street. By the way, what's up with your gates?" "Couldn't open them. Had to leave the car outside the fence." Darren sighed expressively. "Probably. And locked them." "What? You had another argument?" "No, son. We just had a little warm up on the lawn. And here I am, living on this earth for so many years, trying to answer the question, why do men get married? Casey looked at his father. Perhaps we're trying to save ourselves from loneliness. No, son. Loneliness isn't as scary as coexisting with two completely different people under one roof. Take me, for example. I made a mistake once. Instead of being more careful, I made the same mistake again. And I'm not a young lad anymore. Don't worry, Dad. I'm sure you'll find your true love. No, Casey. My life is already heading into the sunset, and there's nothing I can do about it. Tell me, how's your mother? Seems fine, and I don't delve too much into their lives. I'm happy that neither she nor her new husband meddle in my affairs. Thanks to you for the apartment. Otherwise, I'd have to stay with friends. Darren couldn't maintain a good relationship with his second wife. In the initial period after the divorce, they occasionally met because Darren wanted to actively participate in raising his son. Lilia strongly opposed these meetings. She tried to shield her son from the perceived negative influence of his father. Therefore, Darren had to go to court to defend his rights. His ex-wife had to concede, but she used every opportunity to make Darren's life difficult and poison the relationship with their only son. The main irritant was her endless phone calls. She could wake up Darren even in the middle of the night with an innocent voice, asking, "Did you forget that Casey has music school in the morning?" Darren responded to Lilia, "I remember everything related to my son. But I advise you not to make him call another man, Dad. Don't give me advice. I'll handle it myself." These telephone conversations often crossed the boundaries of decency, and the ex-spouses didn't choose their words carefully. Naturally, such unhealthy relationships affected the child. Casey was inadvertently placed in a position where he had to choose between his father and mother. As a result, the boy often acted out, and in his teenage years, he ran away from home several times. The situation reached a critical point when 13-year-old Casey came to his father in tears in the middle of the night. Darren was very surprised to see his tearful son near the gate. "Casey, what happened? Is something wrong with your mom?" Casey cried. No, she's fine. But I'm fed up with her husbands. I'm ashamed to go to school because everyone laughs at me." Well, that could be endured. But why does she allow these jerks to interfere in my life? They teach me as if they're smarter than everyone else. I've had enough of it all. Darren tried to comfort his son. "Wait, son, don't get upset. Your mom doesn't wish you any harm. Normal moms are like that. But mine is abnormal. I hate her. And I hate her boyfriend too. I dreamed that they all dropped dead." Darren understood that Casey was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. He tried to calm him, promising to talk to his mother. "Dad, I won't go back there. I'll run away again if you send me to them." "Wait, how did you get here now?" "On foot, and a kind man gave me a ride a bit. I flagged down a car on the road." Darren was shocked. It was scary to imagine the boy walking on the road at night and flagging down passing cars. What if he had encountered someone dangerous instead of a kind man? He realized that some radical measures needed to be taken. Darren struggled to reassure his son, then fed him and put him to bed. When Casey fell asleep, Darren called his ex-wife. "Lilia, Casey is with me. Explain what's going on with you." He was walking from the town. The woman didn't let him finish. She shouted into the phone, "You're asking me. It's your fault that the boy slipped away. He's constantly disrespectful. Yesterday he almost fought with Alex. Imagine, he attacked my husband. Why do you let your husbands educate my son? You can change partners every night, but it shouldn't affect the child. I warn you that I'll have to involve Child Protective Services and go to court again. I'm the mother, and the law is on my side." Darren ignored Lilia's cries and turned off his phone. Another court hearing took place, forcing Casey to decide who he wanted to stay with. He chose his father. For 3 years, they lived happily together until Anne entered the picture. Casey and Anne didn't get along from the start. In an effort to keep them apart, the businessman bought a separate apartment for his son. Surprisingly, this decision satisfied all conflicting parties, and even Darren's relationship with Lelia, his second wife, improved slightly. The dislike between Casey and Anne didn't escalate beyond ordinary antipathy. Whenever Casey was around, the businessman's young wife would gracefully retreat to her room, allowing father and son to communicate in peace. Even if she wanted to argue with Casey, the businessman would promptly show her the door. Anne understood this and endured. Casey continued to swing in the lounge chair. It's great that there are smart people on our planet inventing useful things. Darren didn't grasp Hurson's message. Are you trying to philosophize? He asked. You could say that. For example, someone came up with this wonderful chair. You sit and rock. Cool. You know what's missing for the complete picture. I don't know. Share the secret. A body of water or a pool. Casey, I'm amazed at your carefree thoughts. It's time for you to start thinking seriously about life. You've finished college, but you're still the same ignorant person. You offend me. Dad, I've got everything sorted out in my mind. Well, you won't tell me more about it from this point. But first, we need to have lunch. I didn't barbecue for nothing this morning. By the way, today I cooked using a special recipe. If you like it, I'll share the recipe. The young man rolled his eyes. Dad, not this. I don't have culinary talents, although I love to eat delicious food. Darren listened to his son and arranged snacks on a small table. Casey immediately grabbed a piece of meat and greedily started eating. Father, this is an unforgettable taste. Today, you get a perfect score from me. The man grinned. Chew first, taster, and then speak. Dad, my head has an unpleasant quirk. All sensible thoughts quickly evaporate from it. So, I hasten to share them with you. The guy finished one portion of the meat dish and reached for another. I forgot to tell you the main thing. Son, should I sit down so I won't faint after hearing your words? Dad, you're a rock. Not even the most stunning news can budge you. And my news doesn't fall into that category. It's just, you know, an everyday thing. In short, I've decided to say goodbye to the bachelor life. Casey delivered the last sentence ceremoniously, waiting for his father's reaction. Darren froze, trying to comprehend what he had just heard. Only after a sufficiently long pause did he ask, "Isn't it a bit too early for you to start a family? You've just finished college. You're not even on your feet yet." That's what I thought. I even lost my appetite. The young man pushed his plate away. Dad, tell me, when is the right time to start a family? When the sands start pouring. It's not just about age. Much depends on a man, including the well-being of his loved ones. That's why I've always believed that one should first stand firmly on their own feet before taking on the responsibility for others. Casey looked closely at his father and asked with a smirk, "And have you always followed that advice?" Darren looked away. "Unfortunately, no. But I really hope you won't repeat my mistakes. If you're ready for such a serious step, I won't stand in your way and will support you. By the way, I've long suggested you join our company, but you don't want to. Father, don't be offended, but I want to achieve everything on my own. Besides, Nancy and I have decided to venture into a completely different business." More mysteries. Casey, tell me, who is Nancy? "My fiancée. I want to introduce you to her, but I haven't figured out the best way to do it yet." Casey was beaming, and Darren was deep in thought. "I don't understand your plan. Bring your fiancée here. We'll meet her." Casey became nervous. He jumped up and paced along the lawn. "You see, Dad, Nancy is an unusual girl, and she has different views on life in general and values in particular. Unlike most modern girls, she frowns upon calculated marriages." "Well, that's out of the question in your case." "On my part, yes, because my girl comes from a simple family. And, by the way, Nancy came from a village to study to become a veterinarian and then go back. I admit I caught the idea of becoming a farmer from her, But Nancy doesn't know that my dad is a well-known businessman. Darren began to understand what his son wanted from him. So, you want to hide this fact from your fiancée. You guessed it. But the truth will come out someday, and your Nancy might not forgive you for the lie. Casey was more optimistic. She'll forgive me for a little lie. We'll get married and immediately move to the village. Ever heard of Deptford? The man jerked and paled. Casey rushed to his father. Dad, what's wrong with you? Maybe some water? No, I'll be fine. It'll pass. Don't worry. I'm just disappointed with your decision. You're my only heir. I hoped you'd eventually lead the company, and here you are deciding to become a farmer. But I won't try to dissuade you. The young man cheered up. And what about my plan? His father shook his head disapprovingly. Oh, Casey, you're pushing your father to sin. I don't understand why I'm going along with your scheme. Casey jumped with joy. So it's settled. You'll pretend to be from the village too and come to visit me. Dress appropriately. And don't even think about coming to my house in your car. Don't take your father for an idiot. They discussed some details of the upcoming meeting. Then Casey left. Darren couldn't find peace all evening. One hot thought pulsated in his head. Casey's bride from Deptford. Who was this girl? He was eager to uncover all the secrets as soon as possible. But at the same time, he was afraid to confront the past. Darren knew that life could take sharp turns. He had experienced the consequences of such twists of fate many times. However, the successful businessman never thought that everything could change in just 2 days. As he traveled almost 30 years ago, he found himself on a train again, feeling nervous. In the crowded train, each passenger was occupied with their own business, paying no attention to Darren. The inner voice kept questioning him throughout the journey. How will your fellow villagers greet you? They probably don't have fond memories of you. You caused trouble and disappeared. Almost instinctively, he pulled a baseball cap down over his eyes, as if trying to shield himself from unfriendly looks that likely awaited him in his hometown. Another thought troubled Darren. Although he liked Casey's fiancée, he didn't want his son to marry a village girl. This was the main reason for his decision to embark on this trip. He set out without informing his son. Since he successfully adopted the role of a poor man, he decided to present himself and that guise to the girl's parents first. Darren didn't immediately go to Deptford. First, he visited Connaughton. His native village greeted him with silence, which surprised him because in these areas, there was usually a flurry of activity in the gardens during the autumn. The reason for the unsettling silence became clear when he walked about 100 meters down the main street. Most houses had boarded up windows. Signs of life were only visible in a few yards. He asked an elderly woman who was slowly walking down the street, "Can you tell me why the village is so empty?" The old lady looked at him suspiciously. "Don't you know? Or what?" "No. I just haven't been here in a long time." The woman continued to scrutinize his face. "I don't remember you. Who are you looking for?" Darren felt a lump in his throat. "Stuart, Michael and Margaret lived on the next street." The woman smirked maliciously. "Ah, you remembered those who've been gone for 20 years. Look for them in the cemetery. They all died in the same year. They waited for their son, but he never came. Thanks to Iris for helping with the funerals." "Iris? Who's Iris?" The woman looked at Darren again. "She's our farmer." "Why are you asking me confusing questions? I don't have time to talk to you. Go to Deptford. You'll find out everything there." The old lady started to walk away. Darren watched her for a while, trying to recall her name. He walked slowly down the street until he reached the spot where their house used to stand. However, all that remained was the foundation, and nothing more. Tears streamed down his cheeks, and his lips whispered, "What have I done? I pursued a beautiful life. Meanwhile, my parents suffered from loneliness and sorrow." In the village cemetery, he didn't immediately find the 2 graves with the nameplate. Here lie Michael and Margaret Stewart. The birth and death dates were illegible. Darren had bought a bottle of vodka at the station. He concocted it and drank half. "My dear ones, forgive your wayward son. Although, what forgiveness am I asking for? I don't deserve forgiveness. He knelt before the grave and stayed there until dusk. His soul felt empty, and he wanted to die and stay in that cemetery. But his son's happy face flashed before his eyes. No, it's too early for me to depart. I must do something good for my son, and perhaps for other people. The next village was about 5 kilometers away through the forest. He walked and pondered how his life had dramatically changed in just a few hours. His heart was filled with the most conflicting emotions: pity for himself and deep remorse. Unable to restrain himself, he spoke aloud, as if hoping someone would hear and console him. You can't escape from yourself. Your past will catch up with you someday, and you'll have to settle the scores. It seems my hour of reckoning has come, and neither status nor wealth can help me. Oh God, I would give up everything to go back to that day when I ran away from my destiny. The heavens remained silent, and only the hooting of an owl echoed from the forest. Exhausted from emotions and the journey, he lay down in a makeshift shelter he noticed nearby, probably built by the local guys. This conclusion was made possible by a compass with a flashlight tucked under an old blanket. Darren remembered building similar shelters with neighborhood kids in his childhood. Despite the dampness and coolness, the traveler quickly fell asleep. He was awakened by a loud scream. "Hey, tramp, wake up." Darren didn't immediately grasp that the call was directed at him. He crawled out of the makeshift shelter, squinting from the sharp light. Before him stood an old man in a tarpaulin coat with a bicycle. "Who are you?" Darren responded irritably, his head splitting into pieces. "Man, what's it to you?" He put on a crumpled jacket and took a few steps toward Deptford. But the old man blocked his path with the bicycle. "Answer. All sorts roam around here, including bandits. So, I have to stay vigilant." The old man's warrior-like attitude amused Darren. "I'm not a bandit, I swear. Want me to show you my documents?" "Show." The old man wiped his hands on his trousers and took Darren's passport. After examining it, he exclaimed with surprise, "Why didn't you say right away that you're one of us? I knew your father. He helped me build my house. You should remember me. I lived in Twinback, then moved to Deptford with my daughter. Now, life is bustling there. People from the city even commute to work there. That's how things go. Before, everyone went to the city, and now it's the other way around. I think it won't lead to anything good. I believe the apocalypse is coming soon, and it'll be the end for all of us." The old man philosophized, and Darren listened with a smile. Together, they reached the outskirts of the village. The voluntary guide waved abruptly. "Go there. See that house with the carved door? Greg and Liz live there. They built themselves a big house, living in luxury. Their daughter is studying to be a veterinarian for cattle in the capital." The old man chuckled and walked in the other direction. Darren realized he didn't know the name of his chance companion. He called out to him, "What's your name, Mr. Siegel?" "I live at the other end of the village, near my daughter Olivia. She's my big boss." All proud and lofty, understanding that too many questions might make the old man return, Darren hurried to the indicated house. In the yard, he noticed a woman. "Good day, Mom." "Good day. Where can one find work around here?" Liz approached the fence. "Well, normally, people don't find jobs like this, but I can suggest checking with our company. In our village, Milico is the only place where you can find work." "Yes, I heard about it. I'm open to any position." The woman scrutinized the stranger with a critical look. "So, what can you do?" "Well, I'm more into construction, but I can handle a tractor." Liz turned toward the house and called loudly, "Greg, come here. There's someone about a job." From somewhere in the bushes emerged a burly man in a t-shirt and colorful shorts. The woman critically surveyed her husband. "Greg, it's not summer anymore to dress like that." The man grumbled. "Liz, why do you keep making remarks? I'll dress as I please." Hoping for support, he looked at Darren. "These women are amazing creatures. Nothing suits them. They nitpick everything. The homeowner disappeared behind the same bushes from where her husband had appeared. She returned with a sports jacket. "Put this on right now." The man complied but didn't stop grumbling. "You could have invited the man inside." The woman realized her oversight. "Oh, indeed." She smiled warmly. "Please come in. My husband will tell you everything. By the way, where are you from?" Darren replied evasively. "From afar. I'm not picky. Any job will do for me." He followed the homeowner, pleased with the thought that Liz didn't recognize him. In their previous life, they had only met a couple of times, and he had seen Greg only once, so it wasn't surprising that these people didn't recognize him. The homeowner, anticipating good company, rubbed his hands. "Wife, set the table. We haven't had breakfast yet." The guest began to decline. "It's unnecessary. I'm not hungry." "That can't be. If you've come from afar, then there's practically nowhere to grab a bite here. There's a cafe in the village, but it opens at 11, and it's only 9 now. I have the day off, so we can relax a bit." Liz threatened her husband with a fist. "Just try it. You'll have only tea on the menu today." The homeowner winked at the guest. "Okay, dear, we'll have porridge and tea with jam." The man asked the guest, "Excuse me, what's your name?" The guest was enjoying the omelette that the hostess had already placed on the table. He coughed after this question. "Darren, excellent. I'm Greg. What kind of jam do you prefer?" "I like cherry. Our tastes align. I also love cherry. And my Liz makes spit-free jam. It's incredibly delicious." "Liz, can you hear? Bring your signature jam." The woman peeked from behind the door and again threatened her husband. "See, Darren, what a tough life it is." The homeowner subtly pulled a small bottle from the back of the sofa they were sitting on. "My main stash. Every master has their secrets. I have several hiding spots like this in the house." The guest wanted to refuse the treat because his head still ached from yesterday. But Greg nudged him. "Come on, Darren. Quickly, or my wife will catch us." The men quickly downed a shot each, and the host hid the bottles in his secret stash. Just as he managed this operation, Liz appeared. "Here, enjoy. The kettle will boil soon." She placed a jar on the table and headed to the kitchen. Greg whispered, "Let's do it again. While I pour, Darren, open the jar." A distracting maneuver, just in case. The guest forcefully turned the lid, resulting in a loud pop. However, this sound prevented them from noticing in time that the door to the house had opened. The familiar female voice made the guest startle. "Good morning, and enjoy your meal. Greg, where's Liz?" Greg held brimming shot glasses under the table, afraid to make a move. He signaled expressively with his eyes to the guest, but the latter was looking at the woman who had just entered. Iris immediately recognized her former fiancé in the seated man. "Darren, why did you come?" Then followed a silent scene. Liz also froze with the kettle in her hand, trying to understand what was happening in her house. When the initial shock of the unexpected encounter subsided, the homeowner, regardless of his wife's threatening glares, emptied his shot glass. "Well, it's like a movie." Liz carefully placed the kettle and suggested, "Since it turned out this way, let's have some tea." Iris turned to the door. "You can drink, but count me out. I don't want to be near this person." Liz tried to detain her friend. "Iris, he's a guest. I can't just kick him out." Darren stood up from the table. "I'll leave now. But first, I'll answer your question, Iris. Yes, I came here not out of curiosity. It happened that my son is getting married." And Iris, with undisguised disdain, interrupted the guest. "I'm not interested in what your son is doing. Did you think everyone would rush to find you? You were mistaken. I genuinely feel sorry for your parents. You didn't even bother to attend their funeral. I don't understand what we can talk about. So many years have passed. Why did you come here to reopen old wounds?" Iris burst into tears, and Liz seated her on a chair, trying to console her. "Iris, So much time has passed. We need to forget past grievances. I would gladly forget, but memory doesn't let go. Darren froze in place. He gazed at the woman's face and realized that the past love was not forgotten. On the spot where a terrible wound once existed, there was a barely noticeable scar. Iris caught that look. Did you expect to see a disfigured face? Fortunately, I got into the hands of good doctors, and overall, my life is great. I didn't fall apart without you. The man gathered his strength. I'll leave now and try not to disturb you anymore. I just want to say that this visit wouldn't have happened if my son hadn't decided to marry your daughter. The guest gave a meaningful look to the homeowners. Liz sighed. Nancy is getting married, Iris firmly declared. I'll do everything to ensure that this wedding never happens with such an unprincipled person. Darren. And I guess the son is the same. The woman rushed out of the house, slamming the door loudly. Darren ran after her. He desperately wanted to stop Iris and ask her not to do anything foolish. But the farmer's car had already disappeared from view. He returned to the house and addressed the homeowners. Forgive me for how things turned out. I wanted the best. Thought we'd get acquainted beforehand. But maybe it's for the best. On the way back, the man pondered how to gently tell his son about his secret trip. The thought that the young couple might reconsider marriage comforted him. However, these hopes proved futile. When Casey learned the story from his father, he maturely said, "Dad, I can't judge you. Maybe I would have chickened out in your place, but I think parents' actions shouldn't affect the fate of their children. Thanks for telling me everything before the wedding." In a tired voice, the man asked, "So, are you still going to marry this girl?" "Yes. Dad, I love Nancy, and I don't need anyone else." "What if her parents are against it?" "Then we'll go somewhere far away together." But Greg and Liz turned out to be wise people. They didn't obstruct their daughter's marriage and didn't even mention the undesirable visit from the bridegroom's father. Iris also cooled down a bit and attended her goddaughter's wedding. Darren was also present at the celebration, but tried to keep his distance from his former fiancée. He managed to maintain his true status, so his former acquaintances patted him on the back in a friendly manner, and Greg tried to lead him to a secluded spot to have a shots. "Darren, now that we're family, we need to strengthen this bond. Pay no special attention to Iris. All women are yielding, and she'll fall. The main thing is not to rush things." Darren decided to heed Greg's advice. After the wedding, the newlyweds lived in the city for some time because Nancy had to defend her diploma. Almost every week, Darren began to visit the new relatives. For frequent visits, he chose the most weighty arguments searching for a home for the newlyweds. Nancy's parents objected. "Darren, why do they need a separate house? Let them live with us for now. There's plenty of space, and the cost of real estate has skyrocketed today. Don't worry about the money. Let the new house be a gift from me." Greg gladly accepted such an offer, and Liz looked at the Darren suspiciously. "Darren, my instincts tell me you haven't revealed all your secrets." The man tried to defend the new relative. "Liz, you're suspicious in everything." The woman wasn't even embarrassed. "Everything is just strange. First, you came to us in a rumpled suit, and now you're wearing a quite expensive one. You should work for the investigative committee, not on a dairy farm." Iris completely distanced herself from the fate of her goddaughter. It seemed like she held a grudge against Nancy and her parents. Liz asked her a direct question. "Iris, even though you're my boss, I want to ask you, will you continue being upset with us for a long time?" The woman smiled. "I'm not upset with you, but I can't change anything about myself. Just the thought of that man disgusts me. And how long will your hatred last? Isn't it time to let go of the past and forgive him? Can't you see that he is tormented, struggling to find his place?" "I see everything. I'm not blind, but I can't do anything about it." Meanwhile, life went on. Darren divorced Anne without a scandal. He was torn between the capital and the village of Deptford, which now attracted him like a magnet. Frequent trips instilled hope in his heart that he still had a chance to beg Iris for forgiveness. He tried to meet with the woman whose love had ignited in him with renewed strength. But it was already a mature feeling. However, no matter how many times he visited, Iris never met him again. There was only one option: to arrange a meeting deliberately. But how to do it so that she wouldn't immediately chase him away? The solution came unexpectedly from Liz. One evening after dinner, Greg once again mentioned to Darren what a famous village it is now. Not a single house is for sale. We might as well start building new ones. Liz immediately responded, "That's not a bad idea, and it will be much cheaper." Darren looked away. He almost blurted out that money was not an issue at all, but managed to hold back in time. Greg looked at his wife with interest. "Well, speak up. I can see you already have some thought in mind." Liz paused for a moment to formulate her thoughts better. She really wanted Iris to stop being upset, and there was only one way to do it: reconcile Darren and her. To make her friend at least breathe easier. There's only one idea here. We need to go to Iris. She manages the land here and can help with the construction. She has connections for building materials and various discounts. Most importantly, she knows who to hire for construction. Greg visibly grinned. "Well, Liz, you're doing great." He looked at Darren, who was confused, and said, "I never thought I would say this someday, but I have to. Liz is right. Come on, Darren, make up your mind. Want me to go with you?" Liz immediately spoke up for Darren. "He'll go on his own. He's the one planning to build, so he should decide what kind of house he needs. And you better deal with watering. You saw that the pump isn't working, and it'll be hot soon." Greg wanted to argue again, but thought better of it. He understood the whole point. He smiled. "Well, let them try. Darren knows Iris. She'll help him. But that's it. She won't forgive him just like that." Darren was already enthusiastic. Why not build a house for the newlyweds? Liz said that Iris really loves Nancy, so she might soften. While the house is being built, they can approach her on different matters. She won't refuse help for her beloved goddaughter. Iris raised her head at the creak of the door, saw Darren, and stood up. "What do you need here?" She mentally scolded herself. How many times had she considered hiring a secretary? It would have been easier for her. And now, it wouldn't have happened like this. "Iris, hello. Don't scold me, please. I'm here for business, not personal. Speak. Although what business could you have here?" Darren took a few steps. "Can I sit?" Iris would have gladly kicked him out, but she nodded, then moved to the window to avoid being near Darren. He sighed. He understood everything. Well, what did he expect? That she would see him and instantly fall? At least she didn't throw him out. He had heard enough about Iris's character. Everyone unanimously said it was complex, but respectfully acknowledged her intelligence. But if not her, Iris. "I wanted to buy a house here for Nancy and Casey since they decided to stay here. But, as it turns out, houses aren't for sale here. So, we thought, why not build that very house? Well, if you provide a little assistance." Iris looked at him with interest. "And what kind of assistance are you expecting from me?" Darren, "Well, the land here is yours. And I don't know anything about this place. Where to order things, who can build well. And you've obviously studied everyone. Look at all the new things you've built." She thought for a while and then said, "All right, I'll help. But not for you, but for Nancy and her husband. And try not to cross paths with me. Don't spoil life for those around you." Darren understood perfectly that the meeting was over, and it didn't go as he had hoped. He stood up and sighed. "Iris, I understand that I'm guilty. So guilty that I don't even ask for forgiveness. But you know, so many years have passed." Iris sharply turned away from the window. "Guilty, you say? So many years have passed. Look, how it turns out. You have someone to care about now. You have Casey, and I have no one. Understand? No one at all, and all because of you. Yes, I understand that I could have behaved differently, and now I could have an adult son, maybe a daughter. But it happened as it happened. And it's all your fault. And I will never forgive you. I'll hate you all my life. She walked to the door, opened it, and stood silently until he left. Darren didn't say anything either. Now he heard something he never wanted to hear. Liz understood everything immediately. So, the conversation didn't go well. Darren shrugged. We talked. Iris promised to help the newlyweds. He looked at Liz with eyes full of pain. You know, Liz, I'll leave. I'll leave some money. And I'll send more. Just manage on your own. He turned to Greg, who was looking at him in bewilderment. He had never seen him in such a state. Greg, I have a big request. I ordered monuments. They'll be ready in a week. Please, do it properly. Install them. He stood up. Wait, Darren, you're talking as if you won't come back anymore. Darren smirked. Maybe I won't. I'll try not to. I don't want to cause unpleasant moments for Iris. Liz couldn't hold back. Iris has completely lost her mind. But it happened. You broke up. Fell out of love. And what now? Many years have passed. No one is asking to be close friends. But you can still communicate normally. And she stopped talking even with Nancy. Darren raised his hand. She loves Nancy. She'll help her with everything. As for me, well, it's a different story. The truth is on her side. You just don't know everything. Okay, I'll pack my bags. Maybe I'll catch the evening train. Liz didn't let him take the evening train. No, you leave tomorrow. And now let's have dinner. Liz had gone to bed a long time ago. Greg went outside for a smoke, and Darren joined him. They sat on the porch, talking quietly, gazing at the night sky. You know, Greg, when I ran away from here, I was sure I'd never come back. I thought I'd become rich. I'd have it all. Just recently, I kicked out my young wife. Why did you kick her out? Because I feel the pull back here. Not just to the place, but to a specific person. And there's nothing I can do about it. I've had 3 wives, plenty of mistresses, a grown-up son. But, like Iris, I saw and realized it all, as if these years never happened. Greg sighed. Well, you're rich. I got it. To accumulate such a sum for building a house, you need many years of saving. You even provided money for the wedding and the house. But that's not what I wanted to ask about. There's something even my Liz doesn't know. Why does Iris hate you so much? Darren answered. Iris is doing everything right. Maybe she should do even worse. Today I found out she was pregnant when I left. I didn't know, of course, but that doesn't justify me in any way. I thought, if I had known Iris was expecting my child when I left, would I have stayed? And you know what I realized? Most likely not. I wouldn't have stayed. And Iris, young and alone, what choice did she have? When I imagined what she went through today, I felt sick to my stomach. So, I'll be leaving. Greg nodded in agreement. Yes, you're probably right. In such a situation, it's better to leave. But how about yourself? I understand you love Iris. I'll manage. She has been through so much. And I'll get through it too. Maybe you'll stay. The kids will be here soon. Nancy has her final exam. No, I can't. Thanks, Greg. The next day, Darren left and never came back. A week passed. Nancy and Casey were supposed to arrive in the evening. Liz was preparing in the kitchen, wanting to greet them with something special. Darren didn't answer calls. She asked her husband to call and find out how he was doing. But Greg said, don't bother him. He's not doing well right now. He'll call when he's ready, I'm sure. Besides, his son is with him, Nancy. So don't just call him like that. Liz didn't insist. Greg told her about their conversation. She knew, of course, that something happened with Iris back then. She thought it was all because of Darren's situation, but it turned out to be more than that. It was a bit disappointing that Iris didn't share it with her as a friend. But then she realized that maybe she wouldn't have shared something like that either. The newlyweds were supposed to arrive by noon, But by lunchtime, there was no sign of them. Liz grabbed her phone, dialed her daughter's number. Long rings echoed. Then Nancy picked up the phone. "Hey, Mom, sorry I didn't call. Things got hectic." Her daughter's voice was soft, as if she was speaking quietly to avoid disturbing someone nearby. "Nancy, what do you mean? Forgot to call? You were supposed to be home by now. Is something wrong?" "Yeah. You see, we were getting ready to leave for the station when Casey's dad called. He said he felt unwell and suddenly went silent. The sound was like the phone dropped to the floor. Casey called several times, but no one picked up. He lives in a house with no neighbors nearby to ask for help. So we went there. We also called an ambulance on the way. The doctor says if the ambulance arrived 15 minutes later, they wouldn't have saved Darren." Liz gasped. "And no. How is he now?" "Mom, honestly, it's all bad. He had a heart attack. The doctor said it was due to stress, and he's not giving any predictions." Liz hung up, and Greg looked at her with questioning eyes. "Well, what's going on? Where are they?" "They are there. Not going anywhere." "How can they not go anywhere? Darren had a heart attack. They are in the hospital. Nancy says it's very bad." "How? He's still so young. Or is it because of Iris?" They fell silent as something rustled. Then the door opened, and Iris stepped in. "Hello. Has Nancy arrived yet?" Liz jumped. Their friend and her daughter's godmother hadn't visited them in a long time. "Come in, Iris. Would you like some tea?" "I would." "And where are the newlyweds?" Liz put the kettle on, glanced at Greg. He shrugged, leaving it to her to decide what to say and what not to. Liz made up her mind. "They haven't arrived." Iris looked at her in surprise. "How?" "I talked to Nancy yesterday morning. She said they had already bought the tickets." "They did." "They had. Last minute. Long story short, Darren had a heart attack. A severe one. They're there. With him." A slow smile vanished from Iris's face. "What do you mean by severe?" "Well, just like that. Nancy says the doctors aren't giving any predictions at all." Iris sat, staring at one spot. That explained why she hadn't slept all night. She thought it was just age. Various anxieties. Turns out, after all these years, the connection between her and Darren hadn't disappeared. She silently got up and walked to the door. "Iris, where are you going?" "What about the tea?" But Iris just waved her hand and left. They watched as she got into the car and swiftly drove away. Liz said, "What do you think is going on with her?" "I don't know. She's your friend. You should know." "Yeah, sure. Iris has always been hard to understand, and now it's sometimes just impossible." Darren didn't like being constantly calling by someone. Just when everything around calms down, and he's again a young guy who knows he needs to fix something. Just when he begins to understand what he wants now, another minute, and he'll grasp the thought, someone starts calling him. Darren decided that this time he would express everything to these people and calmly return to where he felt so good. Darren, he even joked. That voice belonged to only one person. But it can't be true that she's here, in the city. She's there, in her village. And he. By the way, where is he? The more Darren woke up, the more he realized that he missed something. The man opened his eyes. No sharpness. He blinked several times. There was some hustle and bustle around. Unfamiliar faces, saying something to each other. Bustling about. Well, he just made a mistake. He was about to close his eyes, but didn't want to sleep anymore. "Darren, how do you feel?" The face of a young man hung over him. The man was wearing a white coat, like doctors wear. "Where am I?" "You're in the hospital. You scared us a little, but now everything is behind us. Your family is all here, but I won't let them in now because we're going to give you an injection, and you'll sleep a little more. Just sleep now. You know, in a person's sleep, all illnesses go away. They heal." Darren didn't care. He vaguely understood for now that his son was probably worried, and his daughter-in-law, and Greg. 2 were concerned about him. It's a good thing he managed to leave money for the house, or everything would have come to a standstill because of him. He didn't notice when he fell asleep. Nothing was dreamt. Absolutely nothing. When he opened his eyes again, it was dark outside, and someone was standing by the window. There was something familiar in this silhouette, something painfully familiar, but Darren couldn't figure out who it was. He looked, and the woman, apparently sensing his gaze, turned around. Iris. He didn't even say the words. He breathed them out. The woman quickly approached him, took him by the hand. Hush. Don't talk. You're not supposed to. Iris. Forgive me. I've caused you inconvenience again. She wiped a tear from her cheek. Hush. I'm telling you. No need to talk nonsense. You won't disappear. No. Where can I go from you now? I can't leave you alone. Something happens immediately. Darren quickly recovered. Iris stayed with him for only 2 days, then said, I need to go. You understand, there's a mess there, but I'll be back. I'll tidy things up a bit there. A day or two, and I'll be back. Darren nodded. I'll be eagerly waiting for you. Neither he nor she even started conversations about what would happen next. He made the newlyweds go to Deptford. Why are you so worried? The doctor said everything is behind. I'm not going to die. Dad, how will you be alone here? Why alone? I have friends, and Iris promised to come. And you'd better think about Nancy. Look at her, pale, exhausted from exams. Casey looked at the girl. Of course, Dad was absolutely right. She looked very tired, and it was evident. Dad, promise that as soon as they discharge you, you'll come to the village right away. There's fresh air, no stress. While here something is bothering you all the time. Darren nodded. He didn't know whether he would come or not, but he really wanted the children not to be around him all the time. Iris returned after 3 days when Darren had already stopped waiting for her. He had been jumping at every creak of the door for a day, but she didn't come, and by the end of the 3rd day, he stopped waiting. Perhaps she reconsidered everything and decided that she didn't need it after all. Well, at least she came at all. It was only thanks to her that he woke up. Doctors said Darren didn't react to anything, but as soon as he heard her voice, he began to come to himself. The door opened, but Darren didn't even move. They meet me without joy somehow. He jumped up. Iris, I didn't think you'd come. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. I promised, didn't I? Yeah. I didn't immediately think that you always keep your word. Iris could see that the unspoken tension between them was bothering Darren, and honestly, it bothered her too. She sat down next to him on the bed. Darren, I don't know what will happen next. Everything is mixed up in my head right now. I used to think that I hated you, but when I found out that you almost died, I almost died myself. Let's not talk about anything. Let's just move forward in life, and whatever happens, happens. Darren smirked. So, it will be like starting over. She shrugged. Well, you could say that. He took her hand. Iris, I want to invite you on our first date. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. A date? Haven't you forgotten how old we are? No, I haven't. But it doesn't matter. As soon as I get discharged, I'll be waiting for you on our first date. Iris looked at him and smiled. You know what? I agree. Haven't been on a date in 1,000 years. Who knows, maybe it'll be very interesting. Darren pressed her hand to his cheek, and then, in a serious tone, said, I promise you, I'll try to make the most of the